I mean, they weren't assholes. They were nice men, but they were hardcore.
March 2024. A legendary actor sits down for an interview. The journalist asks a simple question. Do you still keep in touch with Sam Elliott? 7 seconds of silence. Then, next question. That's how Hollywood tells you a friendship has ended, but nobody dares to say it out loud. Because this isn't just a story about two men who stopped talking to each other. This is the story of one man, Sam Elliott, who spent 60 years becoming Hollywood's conscience. And over the past decade, he's had to watch 5 people he once respected turn into something he can no longer recognize. One of them was his brother. Another sent disturbing packages to his co-stars. A British actor made him speak out to millions. One he calls the imposter. And one he can't mention without feeling the weight of what was lost. This isn't a list of Sam Elliott's enemies. This is a story about the cost of never compromising. And by the end, you'll understand why the toughest man in Hollywood might also be the loneliest. And the first one, he was once Sam's idol. Sam Elliott, the final verdict at 81, 1987, Silverado. This was when Sam Elliott first met the man who would become one of the biggest Western stars of the next 30 years. Sam remembers one specific moment. Between takes, this actor sat down next to him, didn't say anything, just looked toward the sunset. 5 minutes later, the man said, "This is what I love about this job. The quiet moments between the chaos." Sam remembers thinking, this is a man who understands. You know, that's how real connections are made. Not through parties, not through press junkets, but through moments nobody's filming. And Sam thought he'd found an ally, a man who understood that acting isn't about the noise. He was wrong. 2018, 31 years later. Sam Elliott receives a call from Paramount Pictures. They want him to join a new Western series, the biggest Western on television in 2 decades. Sam asks, "Does he know you're calling me?" The producer pauses. Yes, it was his idea. Sam, then why didn't he call me himself? Silence. And that's when Sam understood. The man didn't call because he knew Sam would say no, and he didn't want to hear why. And that was the moment Sam realized. The man who once sat in silence beside him was now too busy to sit in silence with anyone. But wait, I haven't told you who this man is yet, have I? According to a writer on the show, we wrote that role specifically for Sam. The character was called Uncle Earl, the brother of the ranch patriarch. A man who didn't speak much, but when he did, everyone listened. But when Sam turned it down, the star didn't ask why. He just said, "Find someone else." Like 31 years of friendship didn't matter. Sam never received another call. Why does this hurt so much? Because it's not about the role. It's about a friend who changed so much that they don't think you deserve a conversation anymore. It's like when you run into your best friend from high school after 20 years and they look at you like a stranger, not because they forgot you, but because they've become someone you don't recognize anymore. That man was Kevin Costner, and the show was Yellowstone.
Do not touch it. Do not walk in it.
The $2,000 Cowboy, costume versus character. 2023, a private screening in Montana. A friend asks Sam if he watches Yellowstone. Sam's answer, "I watched the first 10 minutes. Then I saw him wearing $2,000 cowboy boots. I turned off the TV. Because if you need $2,000 boots to play a cowboy, you're not a cowboy. You're a model in cowboy costume." And that was only the first one. The second one? He turned every film set into a performance about himself, and Sam had to endure him for 3 months. 2007, Ghost Rider, first day on set. Sam Elliott arrives at 6 a.m., as always. Nicolas Cage arrives at 10 a.m. in a black Lamborghini wearing the Joker costume from his previous film. The assistant director whispers to Sam, "He's still in character from last month." Sam looks, says nothing, but he remembers his exact thought. "We're going to have a long 3 months." And you know the first thing Sam realized about Nicolas Cage? Not whether he was talented, but that he was afraid of silence. Week 2 of filming. There's a crucial scene. Johnny Blaze, that's Cage, realizes his power is destroying the people he loves. The caretaker, Sam, stands across from him, silent. No dialogue, just eyes. The director explains, "Nick, you just stand there. Let Sam carry the emotion. Your silence will say everything." Cage nods. "Action!" Cage stands there. 1 second. Then he starts. Fists clenching, heavy brow, furrow, rapid breathing. Then screaming. "I can't control it!" Director. "Cut! Nick, we removed that line." Cage. "I know, but the character needs to say something." They shoot again. Cage screams again. They shoot again. Cage adds hand gestures. After the 8th take, the director surrenders. "Okay, we'll keep the take with the scream." Sam stands in the shadows, watching the monitor. A crew member later recalled, "I saw Sam shake his head, very slightly. Then he walked away without a word." That night, at his hotel, he called his agent. "How many more days do I have contracted on this film?" 37 days, Sam." "Okay, I'll finish it. But never book me with Nicolas Cage again." Nicolas Cage, the man afraid of silence. Now, let me explain why this matters. What Nicolas Cage doesn't understand, and what an entire generation of new actors doesn't understand, is this. Silence is not doing nothing. Silence is doing everything inside. I remember when my father passed away, I had to call my sister to tell her. When she picked up, I said, "Hey, Dad's gone." She said nothing. For 15 seconds. No crying, no screaming, just silence. And those 15 seconds? They weighed more than any words could. Sam Elliott knows this because he's lived it. Nicolas Cage doesn't know it because he's never allowed himself to be silent long enough to feel it. And when you can't be silent, you can't truly act. You can only perform, and performing is not the same as being. After Ghost Rider, Sam and Cage never worked together again. But 10 years later, when asked about the hardest actors to work with, Sam didn't name Cage. He said, "There are people who turn every frame into being about themselves, not about the story, not about the character, but about reminding everyone, 'Look here, I'm acting.'" Everyone in the industry knew who he meant. But if you think that's bad, wait until you hear about the man who sent packages of deceased rodents to his colleagues. That's when Sam realized Hollywood wasn't just changing, it was celebrating people who confused cruelty with commitment. The Charlatan. 2016, Suicide Squad. Jared Leto is cast as the Joker. To prepare for the role, he sent used prophylactics to Margot Robbie, sent disturbing video recordings to cast members, never broke character on set, even between takes, demanded to be called Mr. J instead of Jared. Hollywood magazines praised his dedication. Variety wrote, "Leto has taken method acting to a new level." Sam Elliott read that article, and he told a friend, "Method acting is gone. This is just narcissism." Let me tell you about real method acting. 1976. Robert De Niro preparing for Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. You know what he did? He drove an actual taxi in New York. 12 hours a day for 4 weeks. No cameras, no press, just him and real passengers. Daniel Day-Lewis for My Left Foot. He stayed in a wheelchair for 3 months, even when they weren't filming. The crew had to wheel him to lunch. But here's the difference. They didn't send packages to torment their colleagues. They didn't create drama for the press. They just worked. Real method acting is a private process. You do it for the role, not for the magazine article. 2015. Sam Elliott is offered a supporting role in an independent film. When he arrives to read the script with the other actors, he realizes Jared Leto has also been cast. Sam reads his part, then quietly leaves the room. The next day, his agent calls the director. "Sam is withdrawing." Director: "Why? Did we do something wrong?" Agent: "Sam said he's too old to tolerate what he called method nonsense."
The film was never made. And here's the question I want to ask you. When does dedication become narcissism? I think about the craftsmen I know, the blacksmith who makes knives, the potter who makes bowls. They don't tell you about their process. They don't post videos about how they prepare mentally before working. They just do it. And when the product is finished, it speaks for itself. Sam believes acting is the same. If you're good, people will see it on screen. You don't need to send disturbing packages to prove it. And when Jared Leto turned method acting into a public performance, Sam didn't see art, he saw marketing. And for a man like Sam, who spent 60 years trying to disappear into his roles, watching someone turn a role into an advertisement for themselves, that's not just annoying, that's offensive. Methods or madness? The charlatan on set. Sam never worked with Leto. He made sure of that. But there was one actor he couldn't avoid. Not because they were on the same film, but because this actor made a movie that Sam couldn't ignore. A movie that was praised as the truth about the American West. A movie starring someone who, in Sam's words, knows as much about the West as I know about the Queen's English. And that's when Sam did something he'd never done in 60 years. He spoke out publicly, in front of millions, to attack not just the actor, but everything the film represented. 2021. The Power of the Dog. A revisionist Western directed by James Campion. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Phil Burbank, a cruel Montana rancher hiding his sexuality in 1925. Critics call it a masterpiece. Oscar nominations follow. The film is praised as deconstructing toxic masculinity in the Western genre. Sam Elliott watches it, and for the first time in his career, he doesn't stay silent. To understand why this broke Sam's silence, you need to understand what Westerns meant to him. They weren't just movies. They were moral codes. The way a samurai film isn't just about sword fights, it's about Bushido, the way of the warrior. Westerns taught a generation of Americans about keeping your word, protecting the vulnerable, facing your fears alone, never complaining about hardship. These weren't just entertainment, they were instruction manuals for manhood. And The Power of the Dog didn't just change the story, it mocked it. March 2022. Mark Maron's WTF podcast. Sam Elliott is asked about recent Westerns, and this is what he said, verbatim. "Where's the Western in this Western? I mean, Cumberbatch never got out of his chaps. He's running around in what looks like a tutu. There's all these allusions to homosexuality throughout the movie, and what does this Brit know about the American West? He's got this Princeton-Yale mentality. And I'm thinking, these are the people who are making Westerns now? The West was about men who knew how to work, with their hands, with animals, with the land. And here's this guy dancing around in chaps like he's in a ballet." The Western Ballet, Protecting the Frontier. The podcast went viral within hours. Now, before we judge Sam too harshly, let me tell you what he was really angry about. It wasn't Benedict Cumberbatch personally. The man is a brilliant actor. It wasn't about homosexuality in Westerns. Sam has never had problems with that. It was about something deeper.
The feeling that the people making Westerns now don't respect what Westerns meant to the people who lived them. Imagine you're a World War II veteran. You were there. You know what it really was. The fear, the mud, the randomness of who lived and who didn't. Then, someone makes a war film that treats the entire war as a metaphor for toxic masculinity. You'd feel diminished, like your experience was being used as a political prop. That's what Sam felt watching The Power of the Dog. Not that it was bad, but that it was using the West to make a point about something else. And in doing so, it forgot the real people who lived that life. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Twitter erupted. Think pieces called Sam a relic and a homophobe. Jane Campion, the director, responded, "I'm sorry he felt that way, but the West wasn't just one thing." Benedict Cumberbatch took the high road. "I have respect for Sam Elliott. We just see the West differently." Sam never apologized, never clarified, never backed down. 3 months later, in another interview, he said, "I stand by every word, and if that makes me the last man standing for what Westerns really were, then I'll stand alone." And here's what I find fascinating. Sam wasn't wrong, but neither was Campion. The West was full of men like Phil Burbank, closeted, cruel, damaged. But the West was also full of men like Sam's father, quiet, honest, trying to do right by their families. The question is, which story deserves to be told? And Sam's answer was, both, but not at the expense of forgetting the other. But this public battle, as painful as it was, wasn't the deepest wound Sam carried. Because there was one more man, someone Sam thought would stand beside him forever, someone who, in Sam's words, was the only one who truly understood, until he didn't. 1998, The Big Lebowski. Sam Elliott plays the stranger, the film's narrator. Jeff Bridges plays the dude. They had worked together before on other projects, but this was when they became brothers. Not in the Hollywood sense, where people call each other brother at parties they'll never remember, but in the real sense, where silence means trust. You know what made their friendship different? It was what they didn't talk about. Most Hollywood friendships are built on comparing agents, discussing deals, networking for the next project. Sam and Jeff never talked about any of that. A crew member from The Big Lebowski remembers, between takes, they'd sit together, sometimes not saying a word for 10, 15 minutes, just comfortable in the silence. Like two old men on a porch who've known each other so long, they don't need words anymore. That's the rarest thing in Hollywood, not friendship, but friendship that doesn't need performance. And Sam thought he'd found it for life.
He was wrong.
2010. Jeff Bridges wins the Oscar for Crazy Heart. A deserved victory, a brilliant performance. Sam was there that night. He hugged Jeff after the win. He was genuinely happy. But according to friends close to Sam, something shifted that night. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly, like a river changing course. Within 6 months, Jeff started appearing in high-fashion magazines, started wearing political messages on red carpets, started attending events Sam would never attend, started using phrases like, "using my platform." A friend of Sam's recalls, Sam didn't judge Jeff for any of those things individually. It was the accumulation. Jeff had always been the guy who showed up to set in jeans and a flannel shirt, who talked about fly fishing instead of box office, who treated the craft like it was sacred, but the fame like it was silly. After the Oscar, he started treating the fame like it mattered. And Sam noticed that the man who used to call him every few weeks was now calling every few months, then every 6 months, then not at all. Now, before we make Jeff Bridges the villain here, let me say this. He didn't do anything wrong. Winning an Oscar changes you. It has to. Suddenly you have opportunities you never had, responsibilities you never asked for, People want things from you. And maybe Jeff decided he wanted to use that platform for good. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's what Sam saw. He saw his friend slowly become someone who needed the spotlight when they used to share the shadows. It's like watching your best friend from college become obsessed with LinkedIn and networking events when you used to bond over hating that stuff. They didn't betray you. They just outgrew you. And sometimes that hurts more than betrayal. 2014, the Golden Globes. Jeff Bridges is presenting an award. Sam Elliott is in the audience, nominated for a TV role. The camera catches them sitting 4 rows apart. They don't acknowledge each other. Later that night, at the after-party, they're in the same room for 3 hours. According to multiple witnesses, they never speak. They don't avoid each other dramatically. They just exist in parallel. A journalist notices and asks Jeff's publicist, "Did Sam and Jeff have a falling out?" The publicist replies, "They're both busy. They're fine." But they weren't fine. 2018. Jeff Bridges is diagnosed with cancer. News breaks in October. Within hours, dozens of actors send public messages of support. Twitter fills with tributes. Sam Elliott doesn't post anything public. But according to someone close to Jeff's family, Sam called Jeff's wife directly, spoke with her for 20 minutes, offered to help in any way, asked her not to tell anyone he called. Jeff never knew about the call until a year later when his wife mentioned it. By then, it was too late to repair what had broken. And this is what breaks my heart about their story. Sam never stopped caring about Jeff. He just couldn't be around who Jeff had become. And Jeff never stopped respecting Sam. He just couldn't understand why Sam pulled away. You know what this reminds me of? It's like when your best friend gets married to someone you don't particularly like. The friend is still the friend, but there's now a wall there. Not because of anger, but because you can't share the silence anymore. Someone else occupies that silence now. Sam and Jeff could have fixed this. All it would have taken was one honest conversation. But men like Sam, men of his generation, don't have those conversations. They believe if you have to say it, it's already too late. So instead, they sit 4 rows apart, in rooms they're both in, loving each other from a distance. And that might be sadder than any ending. Which brings us back to March 2024. Do you still keep in touch with Sam Elliott? 7 seconds of silence. Next question. That silence wasn't anger. It was grief. For a friendship that never ended, it just faded. Like old photographs left in the sun too long. The golden statue. When fame kills brotherhood. But here's the question nobody wants to ask Sam Elliott. What if he's wrong? What if Kevin Costner didn't abandon authenticity? He just found a way to bring westerns to a generation that needed them. What if Nicolas Cage's spectacle is just a different kind of truth, the kind that says emotions are loud and messy? What if Jared Leto's methods worked for him, even if they wouldn't work for Sam? What if The Power of the Dog told a story that needed telling, even if it wasn't the story Sam wanted told? What if Jeff Bridges didn't change? He just grew in a direction Sam couldn't follow. What if Sam's code, as beautiful as it is also a prison? What if his refusal to compromise isn't strength, but fear? Fear of a world that doesn't need cowboys anymore. The Loneliest Cowboy. The Price of Never Bending. Sam Elliott is 81 years old now. He doesn't make many films anymore, doesn't do many interviews, lives quietly with his wife in Malibu. When young actors meet him, they're often surprised. They expect him to be bitter, but he's not. He's just present. A young actor who worked with him in 2023 said, I asked him for advice about dealing with social media pressure. He said, "Don't ask me. I don't understand that world. But I understand this. If you need everyone to love you, you'll never love yourself." And maybe that's the answer. Sam Elliott isn't right about everything, but he's right about something. In a world where everyone is terrified of being disliked, where every opinion is focus grouped, where authenticity is just another marketing strategy, someone has to be willing to draw a line. Not because the line is perfect, but because without lines, everything becomes the same. The 5 men Sam couldn't accept, they're not villains, they're just different.
Kevin Costner brought westerns to millions. Nicolas Cage created moments people will never forget. Jared Leto pushed boundaries, even if Sam hated how. Benedict Cumberbatch told a story that needed telling. Jeff Bridges used his platform to help people. They all did good things, but they did them in ways that violated Sam's code. And Sam had to choose: compromise the code or live with the loneliness. He chose loneliness, not because he's stubborn, but because some people would rather be alone with their principles than surrounded by people who don't share them. Is that right? I don't know, but it's honest. And maybe, in the end, that's all Sam Elliott ever wanted to be. Today, Sam Elliott is still acting, still showing up, still delivering performances that make you forget you're watching Sam Elliott. He doesn't go to award shows, doesn't post on social media, doesn't explain himself to anyone. And maybe that's the lesson he's been teaching us all along. You don't owe the world an explanation for who you are. You just owe yourself the courage to be it, even if that means standing alone, especially if that means standing alone. Because in a world where everyone's trying to be everything to everyone, the rarest thing isn't talent, it's consistency. Not stubbornness, but knowing what you believe and living it so completely that people can see it in your silence. Sam Elliott is 81 years old, and he's still the same man who sat quietly on that Silverado set in 1987. The world changed around him. Hollywood changed around him. His friends changed around him. But he didn't. And whether you think that's beautiful or tragic, well, that probably says more about you than it does about him. If this story made you think about your own lines, the principles you won't cross, the friendships you've lost to distance, the person you used to be versus who you've become, then maybe Sam Elliott's loneliness wasn't for nothing. Maybe it was just the price of showing the rest of us what it looks like to never bend, even when bending would be easier, especially when bending would be easier. The last real cowboy, standing exactly where he's always